So Michal is a lecturer and a researcher at the Faculty of Education at Western Galilee College, where she is the head of literacy and innovation in education master's program. Her research focuses on implicit cognitive processes and explicit metacognitive skills that contribute to reading fluency and comprehension in young and adult readers, as well as in readers with dyslexia, and on an intervention programs that promote reading abilities. So thank you, Michal.
Thank you. So I'm honored to introduce Professor Birkan. He's joining us from the University of Ankara in Turkey. He is an associate professor at Ankara University. He completed his doctoral studies at the Department of Special Education at Ankara University. And had a postdoc position at the Department of Special Education at Haifa University, with which he is still collaborating. He has published his research in numerous publications and has made significant contributions to the field of early literacy, reading comprehension, and also the challenges faced by children with learning disabilities. So your stage, Professor Birkan.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank my friend, Professor Veret, for her kind invitation, and also her university, of course. I would also like to thank to Anna for connecting me to this meeting. Now, without taking too much of your time, I will quickly move on the presentation. Just let me open this. I try to open. Okay, here we go. Hello, everyone. I am Professor Birkan Guldenoglu from Ankara University Faculty of Educational Sciences, Turkey. In this season, I will give you a presentation on the topic of reading comprehension difficulties. The title of my presentation is Reading Comprehension Failure in a Highly Transparent Orthography, the Case of Turkish. First of all, if we start with reading comprehension, as you know, it's defined as understanding and extracting meaning from the written task. In this regard, I want to ask you that, is it a task of such simplicity? Of course, the answer may be no. In fact, it's a very complex process that involves many linguistic and cognitive skills. This complex process is defined in the literature with the simple view of reading model. The simple view of reading model, an influential model of clarifying reading disabilities, postulates that sufficient reading comprehension is a multiplicative model that includes the fundamental subcomponent skills as word decoding and oral language comprehension. According to this model, these two parts are equal importance and account for a large amount of variance in reading comprehension. In this model, decoding, the ability to rapidly derive a representation from the printed input, is explained as the central important skill, especially for beginning readers. Specifically in early grades, while decoding takes more share in its contribution to reading comprehension, as the grade level increases, the importance of listening or linguistic comprehension, identified as the ability to understand the spoken language, stands out. According to this model, the sub-skills underlying the basic elements in the model are primary in explaining the reading comprehension process. Let's see how they are working in Turkish language. Turkish is an orthographically entirely transparent and highly morphologically complex language. It's particularly an interesting orthography. It's a unique language where the grapheme to phoneme convergence are highly symmetrically transparent. Its regular orthography reliably produced one-to-one relationships between graphemes and their corresponding phonemes. Because of the highly transparent structure of the Turkish, a letter in the Turkish alphabet is always almost pronounced the same way in all words in which it appears. As seen in the example, the pronunciation of three English words commencing with the same letters can differ depending on the specific word. For instance, in car, call, and cat, the initial combination of C and A is pronounced as ka, ko, and ke, respectively. In contrast, when examining in Turkish examples, where all words commence with B and A, a one-to-one correspondence simplifies pronunciation uniformly, resulting in the sound ba, and B and A always sounds similar in every word. Due to these highly transparent structures, children learning to read in Turkish can decode any words accurately once they learn the letter to sound conversion rules. On the other hand, Turkish is also a morphologically highly complex language. This feature distinguishes Turkish from other transparent languages, for example, German, Dutch, or Finnish. Suffixation is very common in Turkish with long words formed by combining various suffixes. As you see in the examples, while the word root remains constant, the meaning can change by adding suffixes. Each suffix has a distinct range of meaning, and the phonological or semantic roles of words differ in the sentences to which they are attached. It's a general condition to have a series of suffixes attached at the end of a noun or a verb, and readers are exposed to complex multi-morphophonological words from the very early stage of language and literacy development. This formation makes the decoding process slower and more difficult for especially inexperienced or beginning readers, and prevents them accessing the meaning of the decoded words fluently. Now let's look at these complex morphological structures at the sentence level. Turkish individuals generally encounter very complex structures, both in daily speech and in the reading tasks. First of all, when we look at the complex morphological structures, for example, a word in Turkish can sometimes be expressed with a sentence in English. As you see in the example, soramadım in Turkish, sometimes expressed in English with a sentence, I could not ask. English is an opaque orthography, and written expressions are understood by following the word order of sentences. As soon as vocabulary is under control, syntax becomes a determinant factor in reading comprehension. In contrast, in Turkish, morphological and morphosyntactic knowledge may be more important for proper reading comprehension. When we look at the other examples, we can see that its morphological complexity, it also complicates its syntax. Two sentences with equivalent meanings are expressed in 18 words in English, but in only 9 words in Turkish. While in Turkish, the shortness of sentence seems like an advantage, it requires extensive morphological knowledge for proper reading comprehension. The following conclusion can be drawn from this: successful reading comprehension in Turkish is closely tied to a deep understanding of the language's morphology. Although grapheme to phoneme conversion rules is relatively easy in Turkish, it's necessary to explain why Turkish students with typical vocabulary development still have low reading comprehension performance. Although limited research confirms a relationship between morphology and reading comprehension difficulties in Turkish, the level of relationship has not been clarified. To take a closer look at this issue, my team and I conducted research together, and it was published in the Journal of Psycholinguistic Research in 2023. In this paper, our aim was to examine the importance of morphological knowledge in the reading comprehension difficulties of poor comprehenders in Turkish, a highly transparent but morphologically very complex language. We have some research questions The first one is there a significant difference in the morphological knowledge of poor and proficient comprehenders? The second is, does the sentence comprehension score of reader groups differ in terms of the morphological structure of sentences? And the last one is there a significant relationship between morphological knowledge and sentence comprehension skills of readers? We have some participants, and the participants were 56 elementary students from the second and the third grades. And also the distribution of the participants is presented in the table. We have some basic criteria for determining the participants, and the first one is about the reader profiles. Poor comprehenders consisted of students who decoded 19% of the text correctly, but had lower reading comprehension performance than the peers at the average academic achievement, while the proficient ones were in the top of 25% of their class. In this way, it was confirmed that the difference in reading comprehension among the participants was not due to their word decoding performance. Secondly, working with students who were not diagnosed with any special needs. For this criteria, we checked their school files. And lastly, there was a balanced distribution of students by grade levels. When we look at the instruments used in this research, we can say 3 paradigms were developed for this research, and all paradigms were developed in a national reading project funded by Turkish Academy of Science. This project was a 3-year project focused on understanding the reading difficulties and conducted with my team. The paradigms, when we look at the paradigms, the first one is the morphological adjustment, the second one is the morphological decision task, and the third one is the sentence comprehension test. Now let's briefly look at the content of these paradigms. Firstly, the first one, the morphological adjustment paradigm. It's a classical fill-in-the-blanks paradigms, has 18 sentences in total, 9 sentences for testing the participants' ability to apply derivational morphological knowledge, and the other 9 sentences for inflectional morphological knowledge. Each sentence contained a blank, and at the right side of each sentence, target words to fill in the blanks were presented. Let's see in the example. These sentences were presented to participants, and participants were asked to read the sentences and fill in the blanks by adding the appropriate derivational or inflectional suffixes to the target words. And also, this is also, let's see a field example of this paradigm. As you see, as I said, this is a classical fill-in-the-blanks paradigm. Secondly, morphological decision paradigm. This paradigm is a total of this paradigm consists a total of two paragraphs, each consisted of 7 sentences, and participants were asked to read the paragraphs and fill in the blanks by choosing the appropriate target words. Here is the answer key of this paradigm. Attention, each target word could only be used in one place depending on the semantic content. As seen in the example, the underlined words are added to the appropriate blanks. And also, topics described in the paragraphs and words comprising the sentences were familiar to all participants. We checked this by getting by expert opinions from the teachers. And the last one is the sentence comprehension test. It's a classical multiple choice test. A total of 12 sentences were provided, and each containing questions with 2 or 3 multiple choice options. 6 sentences had simple sentences structure. 6 sentences had a simple sentence structure consisting 4 words. 6 had 1 relative clause with 6 or more words. Let's see an example. Simple sentences like this and the more complex one also had 1 relative clause with 6 or more words. The question the questions took two forms. 6 were in active form and other 6 in passive form. Let's see an example. Active form, this is an active form question, and this is the passive form of the questions. When we look at the scoring of the paradigms, a common scoring method used in paradigms where each correct answer is assigned a score of 1 and each incorrect answer is assigned a score of 0. For the validity and reliability of the paradigms, they were determined by content validity and Kudar-Richardson reliability coefficient calculations. As you see, the results showed that all of them were at sufficient levels. In the testing procedure, firstly, voluntary participation was organized. All data were collected in individual assessment seasons within participant schools. We have two phases in the testing procedure. First one is the modeling, and the second one is the testing. In the modeling phase, the experimenter explained the task to participants and carried out a sample application himself for each paradigm as a model. And in the testing phase, the experimenter first gave the appropriate instructions and then started each paradigm. All the findings explained in a detailed way in the paper, but here I will try to summarize it as briefly as possible so it does not take too much time. First of all, our first question: is there a statistically significant difference in the morphological knowledge of poor and proficient comprehenders? To compare the two groups' morphological adjustment performance, we conducted a MANOVA. And as you remember, our first paradigm is a classical fill-in-the-blanks paradigm. Here is the results. Proficient ones were better than their poor counterparts at every grade level and in all suffix types. On the other hand, another striking finding was that there seemed a ceiling effect on the scores of the proficient ones, and the difference, such as between grade 2 and grade 3, were very small. At first glance, this finding showed that being good at reading comprehension indicates having better morphological knowledge. For this research question, we secondly analyzed paradigm 2, and our results showed that the between-grouped effect was statistically significant, suggesting that proficient comprehenders were better than their poor counterparts. These results shows us that the answer of the first question is yes. This indicates that the morphological knowledge of the two groups differ significantly. Secondly, we compared the research group's sentence comprehension performance, our sentence comprehension performance, and our results suggest that proficient ones were better than their poor counterparts at the second grade level and in all sentence type. In the third grade, there was a statistically significant comprehension difference between the groups only for sentences with more complex structures. And the last question is a correlation questions. For this question, we run Spearman's rank order correlations, and the results suggested that there was statistically significant correlations between the suffix types and all the paradigms that we used in the research. This finding suggests that readers with greater morphological knowledge were more successful in sentence comprehension. If we briefly summarize the gains obtained from the study, first of all, we can say that much of the previous literature has explained reading comprehension difficulties in the context of limitations in word decoding. This study extends these findings to include morphological knowledge in highly morphologically complex languages like Turkish. Secondly, the study suggests the morphological knowledge can be an important indicator of proficient reading comprehension skills in Turkish, a fully transparent orthography representing a morphologically highly complex agglutinative language. We also have some specific comments for languages such as Turkish. Rationally, Turkish orthography reflects the characteristics of the language in the form of the lengthy polymorphomic letter sequences. Particularly for poor readers, the composition of morphologically highly complex letter sequences in the meaningful subunits may become rather difficult. Given this to be true, a limitation that arises in the morphological awareness of poor readers may have caused them to have some form of decoding problems at the lexical level. In other words, in a language with complex morphological structures like Turkish, better morphological knowledge positively supports the process underlying the decoding and comprehension of words and sentence structures in the written material. And also lastly, based on our findings, we reach some practical conclusions. First and foremost, active morphological knowledge is one of the most important indicators of proficient reading comprehension in agglutinative languages like Turkish. Secondly, reading comprehension difficulties in languages like Turkish may originate in overstated phonologically based reading instructions that skip the processing of morphological knowledge as a vital source of information. Third, to improve the reading comprehension skills, teachers should make substantial efforts to develop students' linguistic-based reading skills such as morphology, syntax, morphosyntax. And lastly, introducing a reading comprehension curriculum, including the morphos structures of the read language, in the early grades will enhance reading comprehension and positively affect reading-based performance in all courses. Thanks for listening. If you would like to get more detailed information, please do not hesitate to contact me via email or social media. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the interesting talk, Birkan, especially because Hebrew as well has complex morphology. So are there any questions? We have 1 or 2 minutes for questions.
I also know that you have some problems about morphology and also it reflects the reading comprehension in Hebrew.
That's true.
Right. I asked in the chat, I just wondered, Birkan, because I saw these long words and I was thinking, how the hell children supposed to remember this in their working memory while they read? So do you have any research that studied the working memory in reading in Turkish, whether it's operate differently than other, maybe they need
Also,
to do more breaks and more, I don't know.
Yeah, it's also really a problem for the readers, especially in the word decoding process. Also working memory, as you know, is mostly related to word decoding in long words, especially during fluent reading. There is a difficulty in recalling the small units that make up words and combining them and by keeping them in mind. So we always suggest that children really learn or have morphological awareness efficiently in Turkish. Otherwise, they can't be a fluent decoder.
So you assume that if children have high level of morphological awareness, they will also use it in their working memory better.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
At least, if I'm not wrong, then unlike Old Turkish, it's not from the end to the beginning. I mean, the meaning of the, right? In Old Turkish, was it the meaning of the word was from the end of the word to the beginning?
End of the word, yes, end of the word, not the beginning of the word.
Right.
We always add more morphemes, and morphemes, numerous morphemes can be added in the words.
you.
Okay, thank you. And maybe we'll have more time for questions at the end of the next session.